Today we're going to go over how to edit your document. We are currently editing in Google Docs, although this would be very similar in any word processing system. So it would be similar in Word, like Microsoft Word, or even in your email would have similar stuff. So I'm going to focus on this toolbar right here. This toolbar gives you lots of ways to edit what's going on. So first of all, what I have here is just a recipe that I took off the internet, and it's for corn drop soup. So during class the other day, I made corn drop soup and used this recipe, but looking at it the way it is, it's very hard to distinguish what all of the parts are. So let's go through first and pick out the key parts of this recipe. So this would be our title. So we could put just a space underneath to separate that out. Then it says prep time, cook time, total time. That looks like it's one section. Super healthy, easy, keywords, servings, calorie, author. All of this looks like it goes together. Then we have our ingredients and our instructions. And then we have some recipe notes down here at the bottom. Okay. So now that we've separated those things out, we can actually start making this document look a little bit more professional, a little bit more nice. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my prep time and I'm going to put the 5 minutes underneath. I'm going to do that with all of these different times. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight them. So to highlight, you click your mouse, hold the mouse down, and then drag it up to the top. This is one of the skills that's really hard to learn. So if you struggle doing it the first time, don't worry, just keep trying. You're doing great. What I'm going to do with these is I'm going to put this into a column. 3 columns actually, because we have 3 different times. So I'm going to come over to Format, and under Format, there is Columns. And if you see over here, again, this is another mouse technique where you have to drag your mouse across so that you can go into the sub drop-down menu. This is showing 1 column, 2 columns, and 3 columns. So I'm going to click 3 columns because we have 3 times. Now my times come across the page, they take up less room, and they look a little bit more professional, a little bit nicer. Now the other thing that we have here is we have them all aligned to the left. So if you hover over top of any of these buttons in this toolbar, it'll tell you what they're for. So this is left aligned, but I kind of like it when they look centered. So center aligned just means that you're going to line them up in the middle of the columns that you've made. Now because I highlighted these, they're the only parts that went into the columns, but if you did it for the whole document, it would be very frustrating for you, I think, to try to move between columns and no columns. So make sure when you're making columns that you're highlighting the amount that you want in the columns first. Our title, you're going to highlight the whole title. So again, we're practicing that click, hold, drag to highlight it all blue. And we're going to make that in a different font. So our fonts are right here. So again, if we hover over top of it, it will say font. This is a style of font. I don't normally play with this very much, but you're definitely welcome to. It just does, like, it'll say titles or subtitles and headings. I personally like to change those with the actual font itself. Now, the only tricky part about fonts is fonts all have their own names. And so this is Arial, but sometimes it's hard to find the font if you're not sure which type of font you're in. So I'm going to go to Impact because I think Impact is a good title font. And so what Impact does is this always gives you an example of what they look like, but it's a little bit bolder, it's a little bit like thicker letters, and I kind of like that for titles. And then I'm going to change the size. So right here, you can go over to the size, and there's a drop down menu if you touch the numbers, and I like to make mine big. And sometimes I like to see how big I can make it without it falling off the end. You can just increase by small increments using the plus or the minus buttons, or you can click that middle and it will give you the more common font sizes. So obviously 60 is too big, but 58 will fit across. I could again say center and justify it that way, that's fine. You don't have to, you can have it to the left or centered. And then I'm just going to delete some of these spaces underneath. Now this section right here, super healthy Chinese corn egg drop soup, this is super healthy and super delicious soup. All of this is kind of a similar type of information, but it's not the recipe and it's not the instructions. So I want to separate that out and make it look different. So if you go over here to your insert, you can actually put a horizontal line. And so how I did that, just to go back, is I put my cursor above this section and then I went insert horizontal line. Now there's other ways to do this that you may find that you like better once you've played with this more, but this is probably the easiest way to do it. And it looks very professional, it looks really nice, it works really well on resumes. So that's just a quick, easy insert horizontal line and you're ready to go. So you could as well take this information and maybe make it centered if you wanted it to. You thought that looked a little bit nicer. Oops. These are all personal preferences and there's no wrong way to do it, but there are ways that look a little bit nicer. So that's what I'm trying to show you. All right, so now the top of our recipe here looks very professional, very nice. Now we want to make our ingredients stand out. So we want to have like a subheading. So we want it to be a title. Now you could use these, but my personal preference would be that I would make this into that impact. So it would match my title and it just stands out a little bit more. The other thing is with all of these ingredients, I like to make it look into a list, but my list doesn't need to have numbers on it, because if it had numbers on it, it might look confusing by the amounts that we need. So for that, we use something called a bulleted list, and that is over here. So you'll see that we have checklists and then we have bulleted lists. Now, if you don't like the circles, you can pick any amount of millions of bullets that you want. I don't really care what my bullets look like. I think the circles look just fine and it provides a nice little list for me. Then I'm going to take the instructions. Again, I want this to be a subtitle, so I'm going to change it into impact. And you'll notice that I didn't change the size of these two because these two are just subheadings, so they don't need a big size change. Now, when I go down here, the instructions, this would be a list to me, but it would also be a numbered list because you have to do it in the right order or you're not going to make the soup properly. So right beside the bulleted list, there's a numbered list option. So if you click on that numbered list, it will put numbers in front of any new line. So you'll notice that it doesn't do it on this one because it wrote all of this text for number 3 and it went all the way to filter out the liquid and then they pressed enter. So this happens when you press that enter button. So you can go through and add some in here. So while boiling, slowly stir the whisked egg in, and then I might want this to be a separate step. So all I have to do the separate step, let's go back so I can do that slower for you, is put my cursor beside the word that I want and then press enter. And then it will make it its own numbered list. You could have bring to a boil again and serve hot with spring onion garnish and sesame oil. The last section here, you might want to put this again as it's a subtitle into our impact font. And it just says that this is an option that you could have chicken stock instead of water, or add chicken breasts if you want. If you are going to add chicken breast to the soup, I would recommend that you have it like shredded or thin because the soup is delicious. So this is one way that we can take our corn egg drop soup and make our recipe look a little bit more professional. These skills that we're showing you here can be used in many, many different types of documents. They can be used in resumes, they can be used in letters, they can be used in any type of word processing that you use.